Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today we are going to look at the history of lies in Star Wars. We are going to look at the history of art in Star Wars, and we are going to look at some plot beats of The Mandalorian. So, this all got started, this particular Freestyle Friday, which is what we're doing, by the way. And by the way, spoilers for Season 2 of The Mandalorian. It's still early enough, I guess I should say that. Anyway, spoilers, you've been warned. Shoot, shoot, shoot. If you haven't watched it by the time this video airs, what are you doing? Go watch it. Anyway, The Mandalorian, Star Wars as a whole, lies, Mythosaur Skulls, art, what do these all have in common? Well, I was cruising Tumblr, as you do, and I came across this adorable little cartoon of Baby Yoda clinging to the Mythosaur Skull after he's gone to stay with Luke. And it made it hit me like a ton of bricks. We have not seen that Mythosaur Skull since Season 1. We haven't seen it once since Season 1. Now, this brings me back to a plot or a theory plot twist that I had in Season 1 that I'd kind of given up on. But then I realized there was no reason to give up on it. Now, the idea is this, that Moff Gideon was actually not very interested at all in Baby Grogu. That, in fact, they had a different source of high M-count material. Because remember, Dr. Pershing never actually says that Baby Yoda was their original source of high M-count material. And they were doing a ton of experimentation before they got their hands on Baby Yoda after Din Djarin brings him in. But let's talk about that later. Right now I want to focus on the Mythosaur Skull. The Mythosaur Skull is, of course, the symbol of the Mandalorian homeworld. The original Mandalore is famous for slaying the Mythosaur and keeping its skull over his wall. Typical hunter culture stuff. Now, the first time we see a Mythosaur Skull, it is over the Armorer's Forge in the covert on Navarro. It's a big, shiny Beskar Mythosaur Skull, and this is a piece of artwork. It is a symbol, something that marks her, and it's a functional piece of artwork. It's the sign over her door. This is a Mandalorian Forge. And it stays there until the end of the series. Now, this is important because Beskar is scarce. That's the whole point of that, and she took probably several dozen pounds of Beskar to make that Mythosaur Skull. Then, in Season 2, one of the first opening scenes that we see, when Cara Dune goes down into the Forge to beat up that scum and villainy because she's a marshal now, the Mythosaur Skull is gone, but the show, even though the Forge was right there, so we would have known this was the Mandalorian's Forge anyway, the show wanted us to know that is where the Mythosaur Skull had been and was now gone from. Because if you look careful at the arch, the doorway arch that goes into the Forge, you can see the outline of the Mythosaur Skull. Anything you leave hanging on a wall will leave a reverse image of itself when you take it off. So the Mythosaur Skull was there and is now gone. Now, where else have we seen the Mythosaur Skull? It was hanging around Din Djarin's neck until he gave it to Baby Yoda in the very last episode of Season 1. And then we never see it again, which is perfectly logical, because after Baby Yoda was kidnapped, who's going to care? Nobody cared that the Mythosaur Skull was gone over the Forge after the Armorer had left, because the important part, the Armorer, was gone. What do we care about the skull? It's just a piece of artwork. Nothing important compared to a life. Now, when Din Djarin rescues Baby Yoda, we don't see the Mythosaur Skull. And he doesn't check for it. He doesn't look for it. I mean, he could have done it in the off-screens, but I presume he didn't, because what does he care? The Mythosaur Skull is just a symbol of their bond. The living baby Grogu is right there. Din Djarin's not going to care about it no matter how much importance it has to him. Now, let's talk about lies. Obi-Wan Kenobi, the hero, the good guy, chronic liar throughout the series. Now, part of that was retconning after the fact, but by the time Luke yells no when confronted with who Vader is, it's been established that Obi-Wan Kenobi bends the truth like mad. He's lying all over. So lies told for the greater good have been a long-running theme in Star Wars. And when Moff Gideon said that all he wanted Baby Yoda for was his blood in the room, I assumed that was the nail in the coffin of my theory that Moff Gideon was never after Baby Yoda. But taking into account that lying for the greater good, and Moff Gideon definitely does have a greater good that he's working for. You can tell that because he, just like the pilot would rather die, would rather kill his fellow pilot and get killed himself than betray Moff Gideon. Moff Gideon has a higher up or a greater good that he's willing to die for. When he sees Luke coming, he tries to shoot himself in the head. So, Moff Gideon definitely has a greater good that he's willing to die for, so that definitely he'd be willing to lie for. And he was definitely putting on a show in that brig for Mando. So, the Mandalorian is there to rescue Baby Yoda. He's not going to check for the Mythosaur Skull, and he hands off Baby Yoda without reclaiming the Mythosaur Skull because he'd given it to Baby Yoda. So we don't know if the Mythosaur Skull was still on Baby Grogu. And that's odd that nothing was said about it in Season 2 after it being such a huge deal in Season 1. Now, this is where I call on you, my fellow nerds, geeks, or whatever you want to call people who are attentive to detail. Did you see anything that might have been the thong that holds the Mythosaur Skull on Baby's neck? Because I don't remember seeing the Mythosaur Skull on Baby Yoda's neck during Season 2. And just the fact that it doesn't feature prominently enough to be seen is very, very telling. But what does it tell us? The show doesn't want us to think about it right now. So, anyway, back to Moff Gideon's lies and my theory. Here's the evidence. Moff Gideon, the client, flat out ordered IG-11 to shoot Baby Yoda. They didn't want him alive. They wanted him dead. And shooting Baby Yoda on sight and bringing his body back would not have given them many midichlorians. Also, if you look at the timing, they must have had another midichlorian or M-count donor before Baby Yoda. So who I speculated was Edric Bridger. So I don't really think that Moff Gideon wanted Baby Yoda for his blood. I mean, Baby Yoda was probably a handy backup to have, but I don't think it was that big a deal. Now, remember, Moff Gideon, when he arrived on planet, when he knew good and well that Baby Yoda was in the cantina with Baby Grogu was in the cantina with Din Djarin and Cara Dune and Greef Karga, Moff Gideon sent in a flamethrower to scorch them out. Now, Moff Gideon could not have known that Baby Yoda had the force power to redirect that flame. So, Moff Gideon was 100% fine at that point, without having any other donor that we know of, willing to scorch Baby Yoda to nothing. And if a dead Jedi does not have a high enough M-count to harvest, a scorched to a brisket Jedi does definitely not have enough blood to harvest an M-count. So, that Moff Gideon really did not care about taking Baby Yoda alive. Now, what did he care about? He said Din Djarin had something that was more important to him than Din would ever know. Moff Gideon never actually said that it was Baby Yoda. Then, right after that, we'd have Din making a big scene about handing the piece of art, the Mythosaur Skull on the pendant, to Baby Yoda. Now, that would have been around Din's neck while Moff Gideon was talking. And my theory always was that Moff Gideon was after a Mandalorian who had something of value. And since we know that that pendant was in there, it probably wasn't Din's armor, because Din's armor was recently forged, but we don't know how old that Mythosaur Skull is. But we do know that it's very important, and we do know it's art. So you have Moff Gideon, who is willing to die in the service of what he considers a greater good or a higher goal. You have Star Wars, that has main characters just flat out lie to the audience on a regular basis. You have these Mythosaur Skulls, these pieces of art that are shown very prominently and then never referenced again, and that keep disappearing. So, we have the disappearing Mythosaur Skull that was the pendant around Baby's neck. What is this? It is a piece of art. Now, who would be a higher power to Moff Gideon, who Moff Gideon's actor has suggested might be coming in, who Ahsoka has name-dropped, who is just fascinated by art and using art to conquer people? Grand Admiral Thrawn. We know he's out there. We don't know what his plan is, but we know that he depends on studying the art of people to get a feel for their culture and to get a feel to how to properly control them. And we know that Grand Admiral Thrawn has used art in the past to get non-lethal control of people, because Grand Admiral Thrawn is not the kind of Imperial who wants destruction. He definitely does not want that. His only goal is to have an ally that will help defend his people, the Chiss people in unknown space. So this empire that he's rebuilding It's a tool in his mind. And so he wants live bodies, live warriors who are willing to serve him, not dead or subjugated peoples. So here's my theory. Moff Gideon was just flat out lied to Din Djarin when he said that he wanted Baby Yoda's blood, and I find it funny that he announced that so clearly and explicitly when usually Moff Gideon talks sideways. I think Moff Gideon was telling the truth when he said that he already had what he wanted from Baby Yoda. I think Grand Admiral Thrawn wanted that Mythosaur pendant. I think that he wanted it for purposes of controlling Mandalore because we keep getting hints dropped that Mandalore has not in fact been glassed, that it is still a viable planet with a viable population of warriors. Then all they need is the proper symbology to be brought together as a unified fighting force. Now, we're rooting for Bo-Katan to do this, but remember, Bo-Katan was never strictly a good guy. Bo-Katan is just as shady as Grand Admiral Thrawn in her own way. So, what if Grand Admiral Thrawn is trying to rally the Mandalorians to serve him as a fighting force, just as they've served the Empire in the past? So, that's my theory. The fact that we see one Mythosaur Skull flat out disappear, we know it's gone, and we haven't seen the other Mythosaur Skull, suggests to me that the second Mythosaur Skull is gone as well. So, and that Mythosaur Skull that Baby Yoda was wearing, I think Moff Gideon took it and sent it on to Grand Admiral Thrawn. And it's in Grand Admiral Thrawn, and Grand Admiral Thrawn will now be using it to mentally and psychologically subjugate the people of Mandalore. So, what do you think, my wonderful viewers? What do you think of my new Freestyle Friday? I'd really, really appreciate it if you guys could let me know how you think this podcast video, whatever you want to call it, stands up to the ones that are released on Monday and Wednesday, because I'm interested in if you like the style better. Do you like the other style better? Let me know in the comments below. And what do you think? Do you think that the Mythosaur Skull was stolen from Baby Grogu and sent to Grand Admiral Thrawn, and will it play a major role in Mandalorian Season 3? Leave a like if you agree with my analysis. Leave a comment below, dicing it up like you have the Darksaber if you disagree. Peace out, my wonderful viewers.